till the moment the operating room doors opened. The woman was shocked to discover her husband was actually accompanying another woman to the hospital to give birth, and the family of the pregnant woman she had just desperately tried to save was her husband. The woman didn't get angry on the spot. Instead, she sat calmly in her office, looking at the ring her husband had given her, and decided to divorce him. At that moment, her husband came to the office to explain, saying the pregnant woman was just an old classmate of his, who had just returned from abroad and was involved in a car accident, so he brought her to the hospital. The wife, looking at her usually respectful and courteous husband, decided to trust him one more time, but the husband once again betrayed his wife's trust. After dropping his wife off at home, he lied, saying he had to return to the office for work, but instead, he brought pickled fish to the hospital, because his old classmate had craved it. It turned out that this old classmate was the man's first love. The man had secretly loved her since school days, but she looked down on him for being poor, and on a rainy night, she left him to go abroad. After being abandoned by her foreign husband, she returned to find him. A week later, when the woman was about to get off work, her best friend rushed in to tell her that the first love had been discharged from the hospital and was picked up by her husband. Upon hearing this, the woman immediately rushed home. Seeing the scene in front of her, she didn't get angry. Instead, she politely asked her mother-in-law who the first love was. The mother-in-law said the first love was the daughter of a neighbor from their hometown, who grew up with her son, childhood sweethearts. The mother-in-law also mentioned that since the first love returned to give birth, she decided to let her stay at their home for a while, completely disregarding the woman's feelings. The woman was still trying to control herself, but when she heard the first love say her own name, her face immediately changed. It turned out they had the same name. The mother-in-law didn't realize the seriousness of the situation, and even joked about how fateful it was, pointing at her son and saying one was his wife, and the other his old classmate, completely unaware of the storm they were about to face. That night, the woman approached her husband, saying she wanted to move to the city center, because she didn't want to see the first love constantly around her. The husband thought she was being emotional and told her not to be unreasonable, then angrily turned and left, unaware that the woman was giving him one last chance. The woman then went to her best friend's house to vent her frustrations. Her best friend, outraged on her behalf, urged her to divorce the scumbag husband as soon as possible, but thinking about her newly conceived child, the woman decided to wait a few more days. The next day, while at work, her husband called. Just as the woman hesitated to answer, her best friend grabbed the phone and hung up, saying that a heartless man like him should be ignored for a few days. However, when the woman finished work, her husband was waiting at the hospital entrance. He walked up to her and agreed to move to the city center. She thought her husband had finally come to his senses, but what happened next quickly brought her back to reality. The woman saw the first love standing before her, and turned to ask her husband what it meant. The husband explained that since the city center was closer to the hospital, he planned to bring the first love to live there too, so it would be more convenient for her to have prenatal checkups in the future. At this moment, the woman realized her earlier joy had been for nothing. The only reason her husband agreed to move to the city center was because of the first love. The woman suppressed the anger in her heart. Her husband tried to reassure her, telling her not to overthink things, claiming there was nothing inappropriate between him and the first love. The woman didn't want to argue further, because this time, she had decided to divorce the scumbag husband.